Stop forcing willpower. Science just proved that you aren't lazy. Your brain is literally programmed to sabotage your.
All right, let's jump straight into this explainer and completely dismantle this toxic idea that your lack of discipline is some kind of moral failing or a deep character flaw. If you constantly find yourself hitting the snooze button, blowing off important projects, or caving to junk food, society loves to tell you that you're just weak. But honestly, the truth is entirely different. Today, we're going to unpack the hard neuroscience behind why we actually struggle, what those frustrating symptoms really mean, and exactly how you can completely rewire your brain to do hard things.
Here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll tackle the myth of willpower. Then, we'll dive into your brain's survival mode, look at how to design your environment, unpack some neuroscience hacks for action, and finally, wrap up with rewiring your identity.
So let's kick things off with part 1, the myth of willpower.
Why is discipline so incredibly hard? Are we all just inherently lazy? If you've ever beaten yourself up for procrastinating, you really need to understand the fundamental mismatch of our daily lives. Think about it. The modern world demands the discipline of a supercomputer. We're expected to hyper-focus for hours, plan our retirements decades in advance, and resist a literal endless stream of digital distractions. But physically, we are running on the biological software of a very lazy hunter-gatherer. Your biology is quite literally at war with your modern goals.
There is a fantastic quote that sums this up perfectly. Your brain is not your friend. It's not trying to help you, it's trying to protect you. And that is spot on. Your brain absolutely did not evolve to prioritize long-term goals like, writing a novel or getting a corporate promotion. It evolved to conserve energy, hunt down quick rewards, and avoid any unnecessary effort just to keep you alive. So when your brain begs you to stay on the couch instead of hitting the gym, it isn't trying to sabotage your fitness goals. It's simply trying to save calories in case you need to sprint away from a saber-toothed tiger tomorrow morning.
Think about trying to push a massive boulder up a steep hill yourself versus building a machine to do the heavy lifting for you. Forcing discipline through sheer willpower alone is a completely losing battle. It's like trying to fight millions of years of evolutionary programming with just a handful of cheesy motivational quotes. The most highly consistent, disciplined people you know, they aren't using brute force. They have simply manipulated their reality through smart system design.
Which brings us right into part 2, your brain's survival mode.
To really understand how to win this fight, we need to meet the key players inside your head. First up is the prefrontal cortex. Think of this as the brain's president. Initially, when you consciously decide you want to build a new habit, say going to the gym at 5 a.m. or cutting out sugar, that decision comes straight from the president. It handles all the complex logic, the impulse control, and the future planning.
But here's the catch. The president gets exhausted pretty quickly from making all those complex decisions. So it prefers to pass the smaller, routine stuff down to the striatum. You can think of the striatum as the vice president. Its whole job is to conserve your mental energy by turning repeated actions into automatic habits. You don't have to psych yourself up to brush your teeth every morning, right? That is the striatum doing its job.
But then we have the amygdala. The amygdala is basically the moody teenager of the brain. It's your emotional and stress regulation center. When you are trying to execute a perfectly rational plan, your amygdala is constantly interrupting, demanding immediate comfort. It's that nagging voice whining at you to just watch one more episode on Netflix instead of working out, because Netflix offers instant, predictable dopamine without any of the physical stress.
And here is where it all goes wrong. Constantly saying no to that moody amygdala completely exhausts your prefrontal cortex. This leads to something called decision fatigue. It's exactly why you might walk into a grocery store with a super strict, healthy shopping list. But after saying no to 100 different snacks in the aisles, your brain is just fried. By the time you hit the checkout line, you cave in and grab a candy bar. Your willpower is a finite resource, and it drains with every single decision you make.
So, if willpower runs out, what do we do? Let's explore that in part 3, designing your environment.
You have to stop relying on self-control. Seriously, just stop. We tend to think of discipline as this magic force we have to generate from within and push out into the world. But neuroscience suggests the exact opposite. Your behavior is heavily shaped by the cues around you. Discipline is not an output, it is an input from your environment.
Consider the massive difference between a poorly designed environment and clever choice architecture. If your workout clothes are buried in a messy drawer and your phone is charging right next to your pillow, you are forcing your exhausted prefrontal cortex to make a really hard choice first thing in the morning. But if you practice choice architecture, like charging your phone in another room and putting your gym clothes right by the bed, you drastically reduce the friction for good habits. By increasing the friction for the bad ones, your lazy brain will naturally just take the path of least resistance.
Now let's get into the really practical stuff in Part 4, Neuroscience Hacks for Action.
A massive symptom of a lack of discipline is procrastination. But listen closely, procrastination is not laziness. It is just poor design. If you're avoiding a task, it's almost certainly because it violates one of James Clear's 4 laws of behavior change. To make our habits automatic, we have to ensure the trigger is obvious, the action itself is attractive, the process is incredibly easy, and the final result is satisfying.
To actually execute this, we have some brilliant microhacks from our sources. First up, the 2-minute rule. Shrink terrifying, overwhelming tasks down to just 2 minutes to remove that initial emotional dread. Next is habit stacking. Literally attach a new habit onto an existing hardwired routine, like meditating for 60 seconds immediately after you brush your teeth. You can even try playfully gaslighting your brain by just putting on your workout clothes. Once you look the part, you feel ridiculous not following through. And paradoxically, willingly pushing yourself into a difficult situation, like jumping into a cold shower or entering a daily war mode, triggers a massive flood of dopamine, because your brain literally rewards you for surviving a perceived challenge.
But what if you are right in the thick of it? What if you're stuck in a massive emotional craving in real time? Use the 5-second countdown. Literally count backward. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Doing this creates a sudden artificial sense of urgency and alertness in the brain. It acts like a logic circuit breaker, ripping control away from the emotional amygdala and handing it right back to your rational prefrontal cortex so you can make the right choice.
Finally, we arrive at our last section, Part 5, Rewiring Your Identity. Meet your reticular activating system, or the RAS. It essentially acts like the bouncer at the door of a super exclusive nightclub inside your head. It filters out millions of bits of data every second and only lets in what it thinks is genuinely important to you. Ultimately, your actions stem from your core beliefs. By consciously directing your RAS through what you tell yourself, you literally prime your brain to start spotting opportunities in your environment rather than obsessing over obstacles.
And this isn't just theory. The power of belief is scientifically proven to change your biology. In a fascinating 2016 study, researchers discovered that simply adopting the belief that your self-control is unlimited, that it acts more like a muscle that grows the more you use it, actually makes it remarkably easier for you to resist temptations in reality. If you believe discipline is impossible for you, you will unconsciously act in ways to make that a self-fulfilling prophecy.
So to harness neuroplasticity and actually, and somewhat playfully, reprogram yourself into this new mindset, you need to use affirmations. But actually scratch that. Not those fluffy, unrealistic affirmations you see on social media. They must follow 3 strict rules. They have to be somewhat true so your brain doesn't instantly reject them. They must be empowering, and they must be spoken in the present tense. Let's look at how you apply those rules. Instead of sitting there thinking, I am so lazy, which is a definitive identity-level failure, you pivot. You shift to an empowering affirmation like, I'm working on taking action every day. It's true, it's incredibly empowering, and it's happening right now. By shifting your internal dialogue to a present tense work in progress, you cast continuous votes for your new identity, which physically rewires the neural pathways in your brain over time. At the end of the day, raw discipline isn't actually the ultimate goal. You don't need to suddenly love the grueling process of hard work. You just need to align your environment and your identity so perfectly that executing the hard tasks becomes your default setting. When you finally stop fighting your biology and start manipulating your environment, discipline stops being this miserable daily struggle and simply becomes a natural reflection of who you are. So now that you know your lack of discipline is really just a design flaw and definitely not a character flaw, the ball is entirely in your court. Take a hard look at the friction in your daily life. What is the very first system or environment you are going to redesign today so that failing literally becomes harder than succeeding? Think about it. Grab these tools and go make it happen.